ask you what we want to be. What do we want to be? We want to be equal. So, what do we want to be? Equal! What do we want to be? Equal! When do we want to be equal? Now! Make some noise! Today. And I'd like to especially welcome all of the non-LGBTQ people who are here with us today. All our friends and our families who are here marching with us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for standing with your loved ones and making a difference. We're all here again today because LGBT people do not have full and equal rights in this state. Civil partnership is missing over 150 rights when compared to the number of rights that accrue in civil marriage. LGBT parents and children are unable to form legal bonds with each other. A non-biological parent is a legal stranger to their child. LGBT people are denied the right to be considered as adoptive parents. These are just a few of the rights that are denied to us. I've heard some commentators ask us, if civil partnership contained all the rights and responsibilities of civil marriage, would we be happy then? Well, I say if one group of people are given separate seats at the back of the bus, or separate water fountains to drink from, or even separate laws under which their relationships are recognised, this is segregation, this is discrimination, this is inequality, and no, we will not be satisfied with that. I'd like to take this opportunity to address some of the comments made the other day by presidential candidate Mr. Gay Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell is opposed to marriage equality and actively involved in right-wing anti-gay groups both in Dublin and in Europe. To think that our last two presidents were at the forefront of gay rights in this country, and they brought together people from all sections of society and represented each of them with pride. Mr. Mitchell doesn't appear willing to represent and cherish all of the children of the nation equally. These are not the qualities of a president. These are not the qualities that should represent the future of Ireland. We urge you to press each of the presidential candidates for their position on equal rights and on whether they will represent all of the people of Ireland. We have some great speeches for you here today, and to introduce our first speaker, please welcome my fellow noise organiser, Krzyzanowski.
Thank you all very much for coming. It's wonderful to see you all here today. And there's something I've observed before, and that is that many of us will endure poor treatment or discrimination when it's directed at us. And we'll do that without drawing lines or vigorously defending ourselves. It is only when we see the same discrimination inflicted on another that we resolve to fight. And I believe it is that our empathy that compels us to action today, and a desire to see the current and future generations of Irish people not living under laws that marginalise and stigmatise them because of who they love. While it is undoubtedly the case that progress has been made in Ireland and how Ireland views its LGBT citizens, it is also undoubtedly the case that many of our public representatives still lack the honesty and courage to follow the principles of equality to their logical conclusions. Well, we have a great many allies, friends and comrades, both inside government and without, who are at hand to help persuade the government of the injustice that they are perpetuating. The most rewarding aspect of fighting for equality is the extraordinary generosity, compassion and honesty of the people you encounter. And our first speaker personifies those qualities. Anybody who has heard him recently speaking in the media will have been struck, as I was, by the power of simple honesty driven by conviction. It is telling that in Ireland in 2011, so few of our prominent LGBT citizens are as unafraid of him. Please welcome Brian Kennedy.
Hello, hello! Good afternoon, gorgeous gay people of Ireland. How are you? Listen, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. My heart is full today walking around this city with you. I feel so proud to be an out gay man in Ireland in 2011. And basically I got on board because I thought, like a lot of people, that civil partnership was the destination, that was it, that was great, we was happy and all of that. I misunderstood it completely. So, with the help of noise, I was re-educated in about 5 minutes. And I decided to get on board because this is incredibly important. This is a human right. It's as simple as that. I come from Belfast, I come from the Falls Road. I'm well acquainted with situations that are not correct in terms of human rights. So this is where we put it right, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to offer you all of my support, the support that I can give you. And I want to end by saying, what do we want? And when do we want it? Good.
Marriage equality is just one of the steps on the way towards full equality. We must not forget the other areas in which LGBT people are discriminated against. High levels of homophobic and trans bullying in our schools, physical and verbal attacks, high suicide rates especially amongst young men, gay and bisexual men faced with lifetime bans on giving blood. LGBT nurses, doctors, teachers and social workers can be fired or not hired solely on the basis of their sexual or gender identity. I'd like to relate to you a story a friend told me recently. Many of you may know her or have heard of her. Louise Hannon. Louise is a trans woman who in April of this year won her case at the Equality Tribunal. Louise was constructively dismissed from her job and actively discriminated against on the basis of her gender identity. Louise has since embarked on a career in photography and was recently booked to photograph a civil partnership. Before the ceremony happened, Louise was contacted by the couple involved and told that they no longer wanted her as their photographer. Louise asked why. They replied, "Our parents don't want you because you're transgender." This brave woman, who has already been the subject of workplace discrimination, was turned on by her own community. This angers and saddens me, and it should each and every one of us here today. We have to fight all of these battles together as a united LGBT community. Currently, transgender people do not have their gender recognised by the state. Thankfully, that situation is starting to be addressed. Here to tell us more about that is trans activist and educator, consultant with LGBT Noise and the partner of a transgender person. Please welcome Leslie Sherlock.
Hello everyone! Thanks for having us. We're all here because we won't accept half measures. We know that civil partnership is not marriage equality, and we've come to demand our rights. When we demand marriage for all, we must remember everyone in our beautifully diverse LGBTQ rainbow. Last month, the government-appointed Gender Recognition Advisory Group presented a report to Minister for Social Protection Joan Burton, outlining recommendations and criteria for transgender people to apply for legal recognition in the form of gender change on their birth certs. You may have already heard that these recommendations are half measures. They include offensive and discriminatory criteria that trans people must undergo medical procedures, diagnosis of gender identity disorder, and cannot be legally recognized in a relationship. To paraphrase Jennifer Finney Boylan, a trans woman writing in Thursday's New York Times, it's easier for society to understand differences in who you want to go to bed with than who you want to go to bed as. Frequently, LGBT people struggle with this distinction too. But the LGBT acronym exists to unite us. And for me, when I talk about marriage equality, I'm not talking about marriage for gay and lesbian people. I'm talking about marriage for all LGBT people. Some trans people in Ireland are currently married. In those marriages where one partner is trans, yet cannot have their gender recognized, we effectively have same-sex marriages. Rather than allowing these couples to remain married, the advisory group is so afraid of marriage equality that they will ask trans people to divorce, in order to have their gender recognized. This proposal is callous and disregards the reality that many trans people are in loving relationships. Further complications arise with requirements to divorce in Ireland, 4 years separation and no prospect of reconciliation. For trans people with families, making a choice between gender recognition or relationship recognition is impossible. One proposed medical requirement is the diagnosis of gender identity disorder. Many trans people find this mental disorder classification insulting, offensive, and inaccessible. You may remember that up until 1990, homosexuality was classified as a mental disorder by the World Health Organization. The implication was that being gay in and of itself implied impairments to judgment and capability. Today, this classification seems absurd. Instead of a diagnosable mental disorder, being LG or B is now seen as an aspect of identity which is self-determined. Imagine if civil partnership required a homosexuality diagnosis as evidence prior to relationship recognition. There would be outrage. Yet this is the advisory group's recommendation for the legal recognition of trans people. Like lesbian, gay, and bisexual people, most trans people feel that they are the experts on their experiences, and procedures for accessing legal rights should reflect this. Equality is nothing unless it's equality for all. The past few years, the trans community has come out in force to these marches and stood in solidarity with the fight for marriage equality in Ireland, not knowing if they were included in the campaign, but convinced of the need to be a part of the fight for LGBT rights in Ireland. Now it's your turn to stand in solidarity with our trans siblings. We cannot accept the advisory group's recommendations. They're homophobic and they're transphobic. We need to take action, and we need to do that as an entire community. It's about human rights for all. Trans people are facing an impossible choice between their identities and their families, and we need you to take action with us now. Watch for campaigns from Transgender Equality Network Ireland, TENI, at www.teni.ie, and also watch for campaigns from LGBT Noise. Go online, on Twitter, or on Facebook and get involved. The fight for marriage equality will not be won until we all have marriage equality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leslie Sherlock. And I'd like to add, for those of us fortunate enough to have the gender that was written on our birth certs agree with our gender identities, it's incumbent upon us to support and to advocate for the rights of those whose fortune was not so good. Inequality anywhere is inequality everywhere, and Noise stands shoulder to shoulder with our trans sisters and brothers. Because I grew up feeling isolated and frightened and vulnerable, certain acts of bravery and self-honesty resonate deeply with me. So when myself and Anna were told about, as he was then, a 17-year-old young man from Tralee, who along with 8 of his friends had started an anti-LGBT bullying initiative, we felt a great need to establish contact and learn some more. Bobby Edgar has again demonstrated to me that the highest qualities of the human spirit are those that seek to protect the weak and vulnerable, and have encouraged to face down one's own fears and to deny bigotry and violence the oxygen to sustain themselves. It's my very great pleasure to introduce Bobby Edgar.
The times when I witnessed homophobic bullying affected me so much that I hid myself away from the oppression of the small-minded minority that, in my mind, had some sort of power over me. I felt that if I let these people, these bullies, realize that I was different, then I would be targeted. During my school years, this is what I was most afraid of, that they would discover their power over me. But then I caught that they have no real power and that they are a minority. And that what I was afraid of were not the bullies themselves, but that no one would stand up against them. This is what prompted the idea for my O2 Think Big project. I'm involved in a group called the Butterfly Project in Kerry, who aim to give people the strength to oppose homophobic bullying when they see it happening in their schools, in the streets, anywhere they may see it. So that we can create a positive and safe atmosphere for the young LGBT people in Ireland. We want to help make it a reality that eventually the bullying will stop because no one will tolerate it. We're running a t-shirt campaign and our slogan is, I'm okay with it. And this is the idea that we want people to fully appreciate. It's 2011 and the majority of Irish people have no problem with LGBT people. They just don't let that be known. They don't stand up against the bullies. With suicide rates in young LGBT people as high as it's ever been due to bullying, what we really need is for people to stand up against the bullying. That is why we're here today. I may not have been bullied directly in school, but I'm being bullied right now. Everyone here is being bullied by our own government, who have kept from us our most basic human right. The right to a full and happy married life with the person we love. Now, how can projects like mine be carried out to their full potential? How can our young people feel safe and comfortable with who they are if they can't look to their future and say, with pride, I will be able to marry the person I love regardless of their gender or sexual identity? Our government is adding to the bullying already going on in our schools. What we must do is stand up against them and make a change. What we are here to do is make some noise, and they should listen, because for the good of our youth, it has to start here.
Lobby Group Marriage Equality does fantastic work, and I can't speak highly enough of its staff and volunteers, many of which are here today. Can we give them a big cheer? They do invaluable work, and right now Marriage Equality are facing a serious funding situation. Here to tell you about this and more is Grainne Healy, Chairperson of Marriage Equality.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you to everyone who has turned up today. And I was just thinking, standing, listening to the speakers, that we're thanking people who have come out today. And I was thinking of all the people who came out 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago here in Ireland. And how today is such a celebration for those people who were so brave in earlier times when it was both illegal and deeply unpopular to be coming out. So in some ways, standing here today, I think, is a testament to those who've gone before us. Anna mentioned in her opening comments a candidate who is running for the presidency who really hasn't a chance of winning. I'd like to focus on two candidates who have already come out for us, for our communities, and for wide family diversity in Ireland. I'm speaking about Michael D from the Labour Party, and I'm also speaking about Mary Davis, who's actually here with us today. We also, as Max has said, we have friends and colleagues and allies in government and outside. And I also want to, I suppose, pay tribute to someone who has been recognised for their work in human rights, and particularly in their own case that they're taking now to the Supreme Court. Senator Catherine Zappone, who's here with us today. celebration of how far the global movement for marriage equality has come. Ireland is moving in the direction of Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands, Norway and Iceland, as well as South Africa, Canada and Argentina, where lesbian and gay married couples are treated with equality under the law. And let's give it up for the most recent addition to this illustrious list, New York. Civil partnership, while welcome for many couples as a step forward, it does not provide the same rights as marriage. It does not provide for equality. Marriage equality welcomes the Equality Authority's call this week for marriage equality, and we also welcome the fact that the Irish government, in its current UN review, is going to be asked why they haven't yet introduced equal rights for same-sex couples here in Ireland. Same-sex couples do not have the same rights as children of married parents, and non-biological mothers and fathers have no rights in relation to the children in their family. The marriage equality movement in Ireland, of which you all play such a huge part, has won the public opinion battle. We have moved the hearts and minds of the great Irish public. In 2008, 58% of the Irish public supported marriage equality. Earlier this year, 73% of the public expressed support for equal marriage rights for same-sex couples and our families. And I see today's poll in journal.ie, it was 83%. Marriage equality is committed to pushing to achieve our goal during the lifetime of this government. We need your help to achieve this. Watch out for our Just Love campaign, which we're launching in early October, with a new viral short film which tells the story of Rory, who has two mums, and the devastating impacts that lack of legal recognition has on him and his family. When it goes online, we want you to watch it, like it, and send it on to everyone you know. It's a strong message of support to get this video seen around the world. A poster campaign with the images of Just Love, marriage equality messages on billboards to welcome our politicians and the judiciary when they go back to work in the autumn, and remind them that marriage equality is still a goal and a demand in Ireland, and we expect them to follow the will of the people. 73% of us. Launching the marriage equality audit, which forensically examines the missing pieces from the civil partnership legislation, which means that for equality to be achieved, we must have access to civil marriage, and we must have it now. Finally, we are asking, as Anna said, we are asking our community of supporters to support marriage equality financially. As many of you know, our funding runs out at the end of this year. And if we don't get community support, we won't be able to continue our visibility awareness and lobbying work to get marriage equality in Ireland. We know we want it, and we must make sure that the politicians know how much we want it. Please support marriage equality by making a donation on our website so that we can achieve our goal. We are almost there. You can make a difference. Invest in marriage equality and change history in Ireland. Thank you.